Good morning, generations, and welcome to summer. Summer Sundays is beginning today, and we are starting a 6-week series that's going to take us throughout summer this year that is all about strengthening our foundations. It's all about finding those things that are going to build up our faith and build up our life with Christ. And this summer we're going to look at some key characteristics of some characters in the Bible and the way that they lived and the way that they did life and the way that they loved God, and as they did that, built up their foundations. So this summer, why not take some time to strengthen your foundations ready for the new season that we are going to go into together. So I'm just going to give us a quick introduction this morning before looking at my character. So how do we strengthen our core? If you are doing this physically, how do you strengthen your core physically? The first thing that you will do is you will train. This means that you will create a time and you will create a schedule and you will create a regime that is going to help strengthen you. And sometimes as charismatics, we tend to say that we're just going to go with the flow, that we're just going to allow the Holy Spirit to do what he wants to do. But I think we're coming into a season where we need to get a regime and a schedule that is going to build up our faith. When we're going to compete in something, we train properly and we put a plan in place. And 1 Corinthians 9 verse 24 to 25 says these words: "You've all been to the stadium and seen the athletes race. Everyone runs to win. Run to win. All good athletes train hard. They do it for a gold medal that tarnishes and fades. You're after one that's gold eternally." And so we are in a fight, we are in a race, we are training hard to build and strengthen our core so that we can last the race that we are going to win. All good athletes train hard, and it's the same for us as disciples. All good disciples are going to train hard. In our spiritual lives, there should be intentional training so that we can stay the distance of faith. The second thing that athletes do when they're strengthening their core is that they will build up to more. And as we train, this helps build our milestones in. I don't know if you've ever trained for a race, but the first day, maybe you can run so far, then a week later you can run a bit more, and we keep hitting milestones. And this is the same with our life with God. There are milestones that we will hit. We are always building up to the next thing in Him. So we build up to more. And the third thing that we do is we use our time wisely. If you are training for something in the physical, you will use your time to do that, and same in the spiritual. If we're going to build the foundations of our faith, if we're going to build the foundations of our life to make us strong and last the long haul of our faith, we're going to have to use our time wisely. And the best thing we can do in strengthening our core in a spiritual way is make time for God. God is our personal trainer, the Bible is our handbook, and the church makes up the community that we train with. And so we need to make sure that we are making time for those things. In this part this morning, we're going to look at the character of Joshua. And Joshua said these words at the beginning of his book. He says, "Consecrate yourself, for tomorrow the Lord will do amazing things among you." He recognized the correlation between our relationship with God and the miraculous that was going to happen. And so this morning, let's be people who this summer we strengthen our foundations. We begin to train. We begin to set aside that time with God. We begin to build the milestones of our faith so that God can do something in us and through us that He may never have done before. So we're going to look at Joshua this morning, and we're going to look at how we can fight with the courage of Joshua. Joshua was a courageous leader. He was a courageous man all through his life. And I want to learn some lessons this morning and take some things from Joshua that we can put into strengthening our core. And I'm going to turn us for our key text to Joshua chapter 1, verse 9. And these were the words that God said to Joshua: "Have I not commanded you? Be strong and courageous. Do not be terrified or dismayed or intimidated, for the Lord your God is with you wherever you go." So just some background on Joshua before we delve into some of the things that he did. Joshua was mentored by Moses. He was Moses' assistant, and then later on he became Moses' successor. He was described in some books as someone who did not budge from his master's tent. He stayed the course with Moses through the good stuff, through the not so good stuff, through the times when Moses got it right and the times when he got it wrong. Joshua stayed by his side. He built courage into his core as he served under the man of God. He kept himself full of faith and in the right place at all times. And when Moses passed away, Joshua took leadership and he led the Israelites into the very place that he said they could have gone 40 years previously. You see, Joshua was one of the spies who, when he came back from Canaan, he brought a good report. He was someone who saw with the eyes of faith. He was courageous. Joshua had to overcome the fact that the Israelites didn't want to go before into the promised land because they were too fearful, and he just kept building his core so that he could fight well when God called on him. His preparation strengthened his faith and made him ready for whatever God gave him to do. You see, training isn't just about getting ready for an event. When training is consistent, you will always be prepared. And for Joshua, he didn't train for a few months or even a few years and then just kind of back off. He kept his training up. He kept being persistent. He kept doing what God had told him to do. One of Joshua's core strengths was his courage. It is one characteristic that set him apart from his peers. And it is a characteristic that enabled him to enter the promised land. He was one of two people from his generation who got to go there. The dictionary says that courage is the quality of mind or spirit that enables a person to face difficulty. You see, what happens in our mind, which is the natural, and what happens in our spirit, which is the spiritual, they need to work together to build courage. One needs to feed and strengthen the other. And what I want to do this morning in the time that is remaining is I want to look at 4 results of courage. I want to look at what courage does sometimes in the face of opposition and in the face of difficulty. And I've got 4 quick points with a question at the end of each point for you to consider as you begin to strengthen your core with courage this summer. So the first thing that is a result of courage, number 1, is simply this: courage will always see what is possible. Everybody else will see the pitfalls. Everybody else might see the difficulties and the obstacles, but courage, when you act with courage, when you strengthen courage at your core, courage will always see what is possible. Joshua, when he went into Canaan the first time, saw the same facts as the other spies in Numbers chapter 13. But his courage saw the possibility of occupying the land. In Numbers 14, as the people were beginning to rebel and they couldn't, and say that they couldn't do it, Caleb and Joshua told them that they could. They saw what was possible. They rose when Moses should have risen. Moses should have been the one saying, we've heard a good report, we're going to go in and possess the land. But it was Joshua and Caleb that did that. You see, courage will always see possibilities over negatives and over fear. Courage strengthens the spirit and the mind and takes you to a place that at some point seemed impossible. T.S. Eliot said these words: only those who will risk going too far can possibly find out how far one can go. Sometimes we've got to realize that we've got to see the possibilities, even in the face of obstacles. And I want to ask you this morning and in this summertime to think about this question: what in your life right now seems impossible? What journeys seem hard or impossible to begin to rise with courage in? And I want to challenge you today that just like Joshua, we need to learn to build and strengthen into the core of our faith this thing called courage. Because courage will always see what is possible. It will see differently than what other people see. So courage will always see what is possible. The second thing about courage is simply this: that courage will always stay the course. It will see what is possible and then it will keep going until that possibility has become reality. Joshua stayed the course. He was courageous enough not to leave when everything seemed to go against him. He was courageous enough to keep saying what was possible, even when everybody else said it wasn't. While in slavery, coming out of Egypt, going across the Red Sea, when others chose to stay small, serving Moses, even when he didn't get to do what he said was possible, he stayed the course. And in staying the course, he built his faith and he strengthened his core. Do you know what? There will always be moments of opportunity to cut short God's assignment on your life, to try and take a shortcut. I don't know if you've ever been in the car and you've thought, let's try and take a shortcut, and it's ended up taking you the long way round. What you thought was going to be something that would get you to your destination quicker has actually hampered your journey. And sometimes we may think that cutting something short or trying to take a shortcut is justified, but sometimes you need to just stand your ground and stay the course. Ephesians 6 verses 10 to 14 say this: finally be strong in the Lord and in his mighty power. Put on the full armor of God so that you can take your stand against the devil's schemes. For our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, and against the powers of this dark world, and against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly realms. Therefore, put on the full armor of God so that when the day of evil comes, you may be able to stand your ground. And after you have done everything to stand, stand firm then. Can you get what Paul is getting at here? Sometimes you've got to be someone who learns to stand their ground. Sometimes courage looks like staying the course and standing your ground. And as you do that, you will build something into the core of your faith, into the core of the foundations of what your life is built upon, that is going to stand you in good stead in the future. The things Joshua saw, he would not have seen if he hadn't have stayed the course. His courage that saw Moses and God's people through everything was exemplary. Billy Graham says these words: courage is contagious. When a brave man takes a stand, the spines of others are often stiffened. Sometimes it's not just about you in staying your course. Sometimes you will not only strengthen your core, but you will strengthen the people who are around you. And I want to ask you this morning, and as we think about this summer period, in your current season, where do you need to stay the course and where do you need to stand your ground? This morning, let's not be people that become kind of, wavering in what we're doing, in how we're doing it, in what we're believing God for. But this morning, let's be people who stay the course and who strengthen our core as we stand our ground. So Joshua then was courageous. He saw the possibilities. He stayed the course. Third thing about courage is simply this: courage will always step up when called upon. Courage will always step up. Courage will never back down. Courage will never become silent. Courage will always speak and will always step up when called upon. When Moses died, Joshua didn't go into a place where he couldn't do anything. He didn't go into a place where he said he's got to take some time off and step back. Joshua stepped up and he led the people into the very place that he saw the possibility of 40 years previous. His courage rose and made him rise. Sometimes we need to realize that as courage rises, so we will rise, because courage never steps back, it always steps forward. Joshua fought his own feelings. Can you imagine the emotion he will have gone through when Moses passed away? Moses was someone he had served for decades, and all of a sudden he passes away and Joshua has got to step up to the plate. So he fought his own feelings. He fought his own insecurities, leading a people who would have heard that others didn't previously want to follow him. He fought those insecurities. What insecurities do you need to fight today. He fought his past. He'd always just been the assistant. He had never been the leader. And I want to say to us today, what are the things that we need to fight in order to step up? He fought the thought that they would never go anywhere. When you have walked around the same mountain physically for 40 years, it can be hard to break the thought that you're not going to be in that place anymore. But he fought the thought that they would never go anywhere. And he decided to step up and believe again. His courage opened up a new day for the whole of the Israelites. As they prepared to enter their promise, it was his courage to rise, to step up when called upon, that made their way possible. Straight away, he reignited the dream and he told the people what was going to happen. Straight away. He stepped up, he rose, and as his courage rose, so did he. You see, our courage will take us through disappointments. Our courage will rise above past mistakes. Our courage will make a way for us to leave a legacy for future generations. And our courage will take us through the obstacles that are in our way. We need this kind of courage that will step up and lead when we want to sit down. And so today, what areas in your life right now need you to step up? Need you maybe to be something or someone different? Need you to be someone or something stronger? What areas in your life right now need you to be a person that is going to rise and step up rather than step back? And so Joshua was someone that stepped up, and courage is what will cause us to step up when we are needed. And the fourth thing about courage this morning is that courage will always obey God's ways. When faced with going into Jericho, Joshua found the blueprint from God. He didn't think back to how Moses did it. He didn't strike the water, as he was going across the river. He stepped into it. He didn't think how things had worked before, but he heard from God, and then his courage caused him to obey what may have seemed ridiculous. His obedience brought the victory, and sometimes, you know what, church, there has to be real courage to obey God in the face of the plans seeming a bit crazy. I've known over the last few years, as we have looked to change the face of our church and the face of our organization, the past few years planning to hand everything on has sometimes seemed a bit crazy. I still don't fully know everything that I am going to do. But I do know this, God told us to do it, and so therefore we did. You see, I know that there is a bigger plan at work that will open up our Jericho, that will give us victory in ways we never thought possible, as all of a sudden courage obeys God's plan rather than our plan. Isaiah 58 verses 8-9 says these words, "For my thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are your ways my ways, declares the Lord. As the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts higher than your thoughts." Joshua was someone that saw God's ways as higher, and he knew that when God's plans were brought down, he had to follow them. God's plans were better than his plans. Sometimes we need to allow courage to rise that will embrace and see God's plans established, not just for us, but for those around us also. God's plans are never done in a way that we would do it. And we have to learn that sometimes in life, we need to fight with the courage of obedience before anything else. When courage rises, we obey God. Brené Brown said these words, "You can choose courage or you can choose comfort, but you cannot choose both." Sometimes courage makes us uncomfortable. And this morning, what areas do you need to believe God's ways over your ways right now? What things have happened in your world recently where you're fully yet not seeing God's plans at work? What are you doing to obey him rather than stay comfortable? Because you can choose courage or you can choose comfort, but you cannot choose both, because sometimes courage will take us out of our comfort zone and into the plans of God. And so we've got to remember today, courage will always obey God's ways. Courage will always step up when called upon. Courage will always stay the course, and courage will always see what is possible. We pray that over this summertime, you found your foundation strengthened as we look at different characteristics of those in the Bible who built everything that we know today. We pray that you will feel strengthened and your core will be strengthened so you can go the course and stay the course of the next season in your life. So today, let's learn to fight with the courage of Joshua. God bless you, church.